Obviously, there's national eyes on Nevada right now. I was talking to a Democratic strategist from the state earlier this week, and she said something that both campaigns are missing is that Nevada's not a state that's just Reno or just Las Vegas. And she thinks that both campaigns really feel that way. And when they come in, they go to either one of those cities and then they get out of there. And the other voters in the smaller towns, the smaller cities, often feel forgotten. Is that something you've come across in your reporting?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Nevada has 17 counties. Reno is in one, and Washoe County. Las Vegas is in Clark County. And yeah, candidates do tend to focus their efforts there because 70% of the vote is in Clark County. And a lot of the rest of it is in Washoe. So there's just not that many people in the rurals. However, they do really matter. And I think one example of that was in the 2022 midterm. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, did just a little bit better than her Democratic governor counterpart, Steve Sisolak, with rural voters. She goes on a rural tour every year. She has those relationships. And that difference might be why she won by about 1%, whereas Governor Sisolak lost by 3 or 4 points. And there was that ticket splitting. So it is a big deal. Democrats have put investment into sort of managing their margins in the rurals, knowing they're not going to win any of those rural counties, but trying to lose by less. What's ironic is that right now with early voting, we actually see Democrats turning out in the rurals at higher rates than Republicans. But because rural turnout as a whole is higher than the rest of the state, and because there's so many more Republicans, we're seeing Republicans really build out that firewall in rural areas where they're used to dominating and where issues like gun rights, or mining are really important.
When you're seeing this unprecedented news that's good for the GOP in early voting in Nevada, do you see any campaigns now, less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, knowing that this is one of those states that isn't necessarily a must win, but it's definitely one of those top states that, combined with others, is on the pathway to victory? There's 6 electoral votes up for grabs. Is any campaign changing their strategy at all?
I think what's interesting is that there's one race, in which it really is a must win, and that's for Democrats in the Senate. If Democrats lose any of their Senate, they're already expected to lose West Virginia. If they lose any other Senate seat, they're down to 49, and they have a minority no matter who's in the White House. And so Jackie Rosen is the Senate incumbent there. Now that you're seeing all this early vote data look really positive for Republicans, Republican-aligned groups in the Senate race are now dropping a bunch of money in Nevada, whereas previously they had sort of avoided it. So Senate Leadership Fund, that's the super PAC that's linked to Mitch McConnell, they hadn't spent $1 in Nevada all cycle because the polls didn't look too good for the Republican candidate, Sam Brown. Now that they're seeing that there's all this enthusiasm for Trump, ostensibly, they're hoping that can trickle down to Brown, and they're making a last-minute $6 million ad buy in Nevada, their first buy in the state with less than 2 weeks to go until the election. So I think the group that has really woken up has been Senate Republicans.
When you've talked to voters who've participated in early voting, have they said anything that surprised you? Anything that comes to mind that sticks out, striking between now and Election Day?
I think, as I was on the ground in Las Vegas last week, my colleagues are on the ground. I think just enthusiasm. I mean, they saw really long lines that first day of early voting. You see both campaigns really focusing on it. The Democrats brought out Barack Obama to headline a rally. Republicans had candidates all up and down the state. Bill Clinton came by this week to talk about early voting. I do want to mention Democrats do traditionally do better in the second week of early voting rather than the first, so we'll see what happens there. And more Republicans than Democrats voted early in 2020 and 2022. Democrats have really preferred the mail. But I think you're really seeing enthusiasm. One thing that really struck me was the Nevada GOP chair, Michael McDonald. He's been a huge proponent of election denial conspiracy theories. He was one of the fake electors for Trump in 2020. One of the main voices saying that he doesn't trust the mail, doesn't trust early voting. He voted early for the first time in his life in this election cycle. So I think you're seeing a lot more Republican investment and trust in early vote to the point that even those who were falsely banging the drum about election denialism are now early voting.
That's really interesting. Are they saying anything publicly or even privately about their change of heart from 4 years?
I think they've realized that it's not a good idea to sort of depress a voter method that's really effective, and so it's sort of interesting. They contributed to all this election denialism, lack of trust in elections, and now they're saying, now that we're engaged, you can trust early vote. Obviously, it was trustworthy the entire time, right, as was the mail. But I think there's been a real acknowledgement from the top down, and Trump will sometimes say this. He has sort of mixed messaging, but there's been an acknowledgement that to win the game, you have to play the game. And sort of getting Republicans in Nevada all on the same page about you can trust early voting, get out there and early vote. Not 100%, there's still county officials who will cast doubt on it. And I'm sure if Harris wins, there will be a flurry more. in the state. But for now, we're seeing a real embrace of early voting in particular.